and welcome to this live reading from Accountability, Scope of Practice, Book 3 by Jessica Aiken-Hall, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1. The ringing of the phone pierced the stillness of the night. My nights have been sleepless since the evening at Earl's cabin. I stared at the ceiling as I counted the rings, paralyzed by what would meet me at the other end. Tim knocked the glass of water off his nightstand as he felt around for his lamp. Still unable to move, the pounding of my heart became louder than the phone. With his eyes squinting to meet the light, Tim cleared his throat. Hello? Silence filled the empty spaces as he listened. My imagination fed me every possible scenario. Well, almost every one. It had spared me for what was about to come. Val, are you awake? Tim set the phone down on the bed as he looked over at me. I stretched as I waited. Val, it's your Gram. The pain from his unfinished sentence took the wind out of my lungs. No. Please, no. I'm so sorry, Val. They said she went in her sleep. He pulled me into a hug and stroked my hair. I'm so sorry. Gabe stood by the door. Guys, is everything okay? Come on in. Tim patted the side of the bed for him to take a seat. Val's Gram passed away. I'm sorry. Gabe's hand rubbed my back. Is there anything I can do? I shook my head. The three of us sat together, huddled in a hug on the bed. I knew it was coming, but I thought I had more time. I wanted to see her once more. I wanted to hear her voice, get one more hug. But my time had run out. All the years I had lost with her came rushing back and landed with a thud in my lap. I wasted so much time. They said we could go see her if you want to. Tim pushed the hair out of my face. They're going to wait to call the funeral home until morning if you want to go. I just want to see her. The words left me with an emptiness. Of course, let's get dressed. Gabe, do you want to come? Yeah, if you want me to. Gabe rubbed my back before he stood up. I love you. Gabe left to get dressed. I sat on the bed, unable to move as Tim pulled on his jeans. The phone rang again. This time it was Tim's. He picked up the phone off of his nightstand and looked down at the display. Jesus, not today. He blew out a sigh. Hello? He paused before he continued. I really can't. Not now. We're in the middle of a family emergency. From the tone of his voice, I knew this was the call I had been expecting earlier. Of course, it would happen on one of the worst days of my life. It couldn't be any other way. He wouldn't be pulled away if it wasn't for me. I did this, and now I had to suffer the consequences. Tim threw the phone on the bed and pulled his shirt over his head. That was my boss. There's been another murder. Looks like the serial killer is at it again. He wants me to get to the scene as soon as I can, but I told him, go. You should go. I can't. You can't go alone. It's okay. I'll be fine. You're more important than this job. You need me, and I need to be there for you. Tim paced the room. Gabe would want to go. I'll call Norma. I'm sure she'll go with me. I don't know. Tim scratched his head. I really want to be there for you. I know how important she was to you. I know you do. It's fine. This is important, too. I understand. Tim made the call to Norma for me as I got dressed. She was at the house in 10 minutes. Tim and Gabe waited for her to arrive before they left. I was kind of glad I would have some time alone with Norma. We hadn't had a chance to talk alone since the night at Earl's, and I had a lot of questions to ask. It was the perfect thing to take my mind off of what was happening. Tim and Gabe waved us off as Norma turned out of the driveway. Silence circled around us as the pavement hummed under the trees of Norma's Honda Accord. Under the tires of Norma's Honda Accord. As I waited for her to speak, tears fell down my cheeks. My heart pattered against my chest, intensifying the grief that was to come. With her eyes still on the road, she reached her hand over to take mine. Oh, honey, I don't know what to say to make this better. Norma gave my hand a squeeze. I sucked in the emotion and closed my eyes tight. Can we talk about the other night? Norma's shoulders lifted and fell with a heavy sigh. I suppose we should. What do you want to know? Everything. You feel up to this now? There are more important things to worry about right now. Worry? Why should I be worried? I turned to focus my attention on her expressionless face. She let my hand fall and gripped the steering wheel. I just mean you don't need to hear about my troubles when you have enough of your own. Are you sure? I pulled my hands inside my sleeves. I can't lose you too. Please promise me you're not going to leave me. I love you, Val. I hope you know that. I can't make promises I can't keep. None of us know what the future holds. You're Martha, aren't you? I felt my chest rapidly rise and fall as if it all fell into place. You do plan on leaving, don't you? The grief of losing Graham multiplied as I imagined a life without Norma, too. Oh, honey, there's so much for me to share with you. I have no plans to leave. I still have work to do. I just want you to know your secret is safe with me. I'll never tell. I know. I trust you. Besides, how would you explain why you were there? So my secret is safe with you, too? Of course. All of them. She nodded her head and smiled. Since we trust each other, there's no reason not to share with me. What's your real name? The smile faded from her face. Right for the jugular. Her body stiffened as she adjusted herself in her seat. Well, that's a long story. She turned to look at me as she sighed before returning her eyes to the road. Rose. But no one has called me that for years. I've got time to listen to that long story. She laughed. Of course you do. How long has it been since you've been Norma? Well, since I moved to Lawrenceville, so about 2 years. What do you want me to call you? Norma is fine. That is who I am right now. How many names have you used? How do you keep track? I'd have to think about it. There's been a few. And Martha? Yes, that was me. They think you're dead. I guess they just stopped looking. People don't really care about missing old ladies without any family. It was just easier to say I was dead than for them to keep looking. That's usually how it works. Why did you leave Maine? I asked. I needed a change, she smiled. For the same reason? You killed those men too? I don't like to think they were men. Men wouldn't treat women and children the way those monsters did. I'm more like an exterminator. I get rid of varmint that are causing problems. How many varmints have you gotten rid of? I don't know. I guess I lost count. What made you want to take care of these problems? Norma put the car in park as we arrived at the nursing home. It's part of that long story. We can talk more after. The reality of what was happening came crushing back down on top of me as I looked out the window. It was time to say goodbye to one of the most important people in my life. The desire to escape the pain overpowered me. Norma met me at my door and took my hand. Come on, honey. I won't leave your side. I hung on to those words, hoping they would extend past today. Chapter 2. A short, round woman met us at the nurse's station. Her wide-brimmed glasses were tight against her face, magnifying the sweat rolling off of her forehead. With the straw from her cup resting on her lips, she raised one eyebrow. We're here to see Mary Ann Cooper. Norma's hand was still tight around mine. She looked up at the clock on the wall and then down to the rich watch on her wrist. She set her cup down and scratched her head. One moment. My body vibrated with adrenaline as I watched her walk down the hall. What's going on? She probably doesn't know what she's doing, the poor thing. A tall, skinny woman appeared in the hall, the short, round woman following behind. Hi there, the tall woman gave a condescending smile. Millie told me you are here to see Mrs. Cooper. She shook her head and placed her hand on her heart. I'm afraid we have some bad news. Ma'am, we are aware that she passed away. We're here to say our goodbyes. Norma matched her smile. Oh, okay then. Right this way. The tall, skinny woman held her arm out to point down the hall. We moved her to our end of the life room the other day so the family could have some privacy. Excuse me? You moved her the other day? What's going on? Why wasn't I called? I'm sorry, and you are? She cocked her head as she stood in front of the closed door. I'm her granddaughter. My number is in her file. Why wasn't I called? Her daughter informed us there was no other family to notify. If that's the case, how did you know to call Valerie this morning? Norma stared her in the eyes. Well, we saw her number in the file when we called the funeral home. She ran her fingers through her thinning salt and pepper hair. So, you just listened to that bitch and took away any chance Valerie had to say goodbye to her grandmother? Norma shook her head. The heat from her hand made mine sweat. That's unacceptable. That's something you'll never be able to make right. I'm very sorry. Elaine was Mrs. Cooper's power of attorney. It was up to her who we called and didn't call. The note in the file was from Mrs. Cooper. She wanted to make sure Valerie was notified in the event that anything happened to her. Elaine doesn't know we called you. I closed my eyes tight and scrunched up my nose to push out the lingering migraine. With my teeth clenched, I tried to push out the anger brewing inside of me. My mother would not be happy until she destroyed me. I could not let her win. Can I see her, please? The words barely loud enough to be heard escaped my mouth. Yes, of course. She opened the door and let us enter. Take all the time you need. The light above Graham's bed was on, making it look like she had a halo. A little smirk on her face made me wonder what she was thinking about as she took her last breath. I could only hope she went as peaceful as she looked. I took small, calculated steps as I reached her bed. I let go of Norma's hand for the first time since getting out of her car and replaced it with Graham's. Norma stood behind me and placed her hand on my back. Oh, Graham. The tears hit her skin as I looked down at her body. How am I going to make it without you? I rubbed her frail skin under my thumb. I'm so sorry I let you down. My head dropped to my chest. Oh, Val, you didn't let her down. She loved you very much and was so proud of you. She told me so, many times. She did? Yes, she did. She told me how proud of you she was for the life you were able to make for yourself after what your mom and Chad did to you. She felt like she let you down. We talked a lot about things. How often did you come visit her? A couple times a week since we met at your wedding. She was an exceptional lady. Norma put her finger on the corner of Graham's mouth. You have her smile, Val. You think so? A laugh pushed away some of the pain. I know so. She wouldn't want to see you being so hard on yourself. Try to remember all the good times you had together, and don't focus on the other stuff. She knows it wasn't your fault. She knows you love her. I turned to hug Norma. The warmth from her embrace filled me with love. Thank you for being such a good friend to her and me. She pulled me in tighter. You're a good girl, Val. I love you. The sound of the door opening made both of our heads turn. What are you doing here? A voice I hadn't heard in almost 2 decades penetrated my ears. Norma stepped out of our hug to look at me before her eyes went to the door. She knew who it was without an introduction. The question is, what are you doing here? And you are? My mother crossed her arms as Chad entered the room. My heart sank to the pit of my stomach at the sight of them. It had been years since I had been this close to either of them, but the fear came rolling back in like it had never left. Norma stepped in front of me to place herself between us. I think you both owe Valerie the time to say goodbye to her grandmother. You both know damn well you've already stolen so much from her. Chad took a step back and pulled on my mom's arm. She pushed him off of her and kept her stance, staring at Norma. I have no idea what she has told you, but I hope she's been taking her medications. She shook her head. We all know what a sick, sick girl she is. I'm going to ask you one more time to get out of here before I call the police. I'm sure they'd love to hear what Valerie has to say. Isn't that right, Chad? Come on, Elaine, let's go get some coffee. Chad's voice trailed off as he pulled on her shoulder to get her to follow him. Norma shut the door after they left and locked it. Are you okay? My hands covered my eyes as the room began to spin. Why are they here? I don't know, honey. I'm so sorry you have to deal with this on top of everything else. The weight of her hand helped ground me, bringing me back into my body. I spent a few more minutes with Graham before I couldn't take being in the same building as them any longer. I bent down, gave her a kiss, and took one last smell of her sweet skin before Norma unlocked the door and led me back to the car. She was on high alert as she looked around to make sure Chad and my mother were not in our path. I scanned the parking lot to see if I could tell which car was theirs, but there were too many to tell. Before Norma left the parking lot, I saw my mom and Chad standing by the picnic table. Can we stop for a minute? Are you sure you want to? Norma looked over to gauge my reaction before she put the car in park. I need to tell my mother something. Norma followed behind me. Hey, Elaine. My mother turned around. I just wanted to see if you had anything to say to me. I inched closer to them. She crossed her arms tight against her chest and shook her head. Not a thing. Nothing. You don't want to apologize to me for letting your husband rape me or impregnate me? I see you're just as crazy as ever. She turned to walk away from me. Let's go, Chad. I pulled her back to me by the strap of her purse. No, I'm not done with you. You need to know that I didn't need you. You might have thought you destroyed me, but you didn't. I took care of myself. That's something you'll never be able to say. I didn't need you. I never did. Are you done? You'll never change, but you know what? I did, so you can go fuck yourself. The only thing you changed was your level of crazy. I shook my head and walked back to Norma's car. I hope you and your husband rot in hell. I guess you weren't kidding when you said your mother was a bitch. Norma looked over at me to check for my reaction. I can't believe they were here. I hadn't even prepared myself for that possibility. You handled it very well. Standing up to your mother took courage. Yeah, well, you did all the hard work. I laughed as I thought about the look on Chad's face. You were awesome in there. So were you. You know your mother is the one who's mentally ill. Yeah, I do now. It took me a while to figure that out. I thought I was the crazy one. Why wouldn't you? When your mom throws that around so much, why wouldn't you start to believe it? She's the one that was supposed to protect you and build you up. I can't stand people like her. Now that Graham's gone, I'd be just fine if something were to happen to her. Norma winked at me. Life has a mysterious way about it sometimes, doesn't it? I guess you can say that. I looked out the window as my heart rate slowed down. I had wanted to tell my mother that for years. Now that it was off my chest, I could move on. She wasn't going to hold power over me any longer. Did you see the look on Chad's face? Yeah, that was great. I hope it made him think. I'm sure it did. That was a look of guilt if I ever did see one. I wish I would have turned him in instead of running away. There's still time. I think it might be just what you need to put that fear behind you once and for all. I don't know. I have thought about it. When all those child molesters were found dead, I fantasized reading about Chad's death in the paper. You know, I'd love to take care of him, but it's too risky. It would be easy to connect the dots to one of us if he turned up dead. If he lived in Lawrenceville, there'd be nothing that could stop me. But with him in a different town and connected to you and the other guys from the group, I'm afraid Tim would catch on. You're right. I hadn't even thought of that. I focused my attention on the trees zipping by the window. But you know what's better than death? I shook my head. Death of his career and his reputation. Think about it and talk it over with Tim. I think that would be the sweetest revenge. I played out the possible scenarios in my head. If Chad lost his license, he would lose their only income. The lifestyle they are accustomed to would be ripped right out from under them. And his reputation, if that were tarnished, he'd never be able to make a living ever again. And without Graham's money going to Mom, she would suffer too. I like the sound of this better with each passing thought.